A surprising diplomatic deal, surprising to those of us outside of government, at least, announced by U.S. and Russian officials today. It's a deal that would have been extraordinary even without the world we're living in, the current tensions between the two countries. President Joe Biden announcing that Russia has freed U.S. Marine veteran Trevor Reed, who has been in jail in Moscow since 2019 and was sentenced to 9 years in prison on charges Reed has said were related to his position in the U.S. military. We know this video of Reed here aired on Russian state TV today. NBC News cannot independently verify when, where, and under what conditions it was filmed. NBC has learned that as part of his release, President Biden commuted the 20-year federal prison sentence of a convicted Russian drug trafficker who had served about 10 years of his sentence. President Biden said this, quote, "The negotiations that allowed us to bring Trevor home required difficult decisions that I do not take lightly. His safe return is a testament to the priority my administration places on bringing home Americans held hostage and wrongfully detained abroad. We won't stop until Paul Whelan and others join Trevor in the loving arms of family and friends." Joining us now, State Department spokesman Ned Price is here. Ned, what can you tell us about, and I think if you could also just do some explaining of how long these sorts of things are worked on by how many people behind the scenes, how much of this has to remain secret, and how much can you share with us about how this came to pass?
Sure, Nicole. What I can say is that every day here at this department and throughout this government, there's a flurry of activity in an effort to secure the release of Americans who are detained unjustly against their will around the world. We've done that in cases in Afghanistan, in Burma, in Venezuela, in Haiti, and now, as of today, Russia. The release of Trevor Reed was a culmination of months and months of intense discussions with Russian officials. But I should add, these were discussions about one thing and one thing only, the safe release of Trevor Reed. These were not broader negotiations or discussions about anything other than what we like to call hostage diplomacy. The person responsible for this on the part of the State Department, his name is Roger Carstens. His title is a special presidential envoy for hostage affairs. And that's the key word, hostage. We're able to do things and talk about things things with governments we otherwise wouldn't when it comes to securing the safe release of Americans unjustly detained. And today, we're very fortunate that Trevor is now with Ambassador Carstens on their way back to the United States, where Trevor will be reunited with his family.
For all the joy that Trevor's family feels on these days, I know you know this, I'm sure, for the families of those who were not released, Paul Whelan's family and others who were not part of this deal, the pain is more acute usually. What can you tell us about Paul Whelan or the basketball player, Ms. Griner, who is still detained in Russia? Is there anything of note with any of those negotiations?
Well, each case is unique, and in each case we are working and doing everything we possibly can to secure a successful outcome. The pain of families who are separated from their loved ones, sometimes for years at a time, it's just unimaginable. We are often in contact with these families. We were in contact with Paul Whelan's family earlier today. We are in regular contact with Brittany Griner's network, her legal representation with the WNBA and others. We're doing everything we can to see a successful outcome for both of these cases, to, in the case of Brittany Griner, support her, to provide her what she needs, including in terms of consular access. And within recent weeks, a senior embassy official was able to visit her in detention in Moscow. We're continuing to call for consistent access to Americans who are held in pretrial detention in Russia and around the world, frankly. And when it comes to Paul Whelan, we are calling on the Russian government to release him. We're working to secure that outcome. Our business today, our job today was not finished. We have a lot more work to do, and we're going to continue to do it.
So if Trevor Reed is with U.S. Embassy personnel, can you tell us how he's doing?
He's in good spirits. As you might imagine, he was relieved to have this ordeal on the way to being behind him. He was able to speak to his family once he boarded the flight. I know that we've all heard from his family today. They, of course, are elated to soon be reunited with Trevor. This is an outcome, again, that we have worked towards for the entirety of this administration. Since our earliest days, achieving the release of Americans who are unjustly detained has been a top priority. Secretary Blinken has had discussions discussions with the family. President Biden has met in person with the family, spoke to them on the phone as well. So we are all elated at this outcome.
Ned, I want to switch gears and ask you about your boss's trip to Kyiv over the weekend. Ukrainian former advisor to Zelensky described Secretaries Austin and Blinken as heroes for taking the risk to take that trip. I wonder if you can, or if in the Secretary's view, there are tangible outputs that came from that trip, either in the specificity with which they know what weapons and when to send, or what they've been able to garner for Ukraine from other European allies.
Sure. A couple things on that, Nicole. First, the fact of the trip itself was pretty remarkable. And Secretary Blinken and Secretary Austin, as they were taking a very long train ride, about an 11-hour train ride from the Polish border to Kyiv, they passed through territory that the Russians thought they would have been able to conquer within hours and barring that days. They were able to take that train to arrive in Kyiv because the Russians have been prevented from achieving their goals. They have lost the Battle of Kyiv. Secretary Blinken remarked that the city looked like it was coming back to life. Cafes had people, the streets and boulevards were full of pedestrians. And that is because the Russians have been thwarted in achieving their near-term aims. And they've been thwarted for a couple reasons. One, of course, and the most important reason, is the determination, the grit, the bravery of the Ukrainian people. But the key enabler has been the security assistance that the United States and our partners around the world have provided. $3.8 billion alone in the case of the United States since the start of the invasion. So that was a key point of discussion with President Zelensky and his team. What more we can do, what we can continue to do now that the battle is shifting from urban centers in the west and the north to places like the south and the east and the Donbass. And the type of equipment that our Ukrainian partners need for this battle is different than what they would have needed, what they did need to win the Battle of Kyiv. So there was a discussion of that. There was also a discussion of what we can continue to do to hold Russia to account with our export control measures, with our financial sanctions. And those were the key topics of discussions precisely because those are the elements of our strategy. Provide support, unprecedented levels of support to our Ukrainian partners, just as we mount unprecedented economic and financial pressure on Russia and everyone who is backing this war effort on the part of the Kremlin in Ukraine.